Welcome everyone. Let's start with a question. What's this graph about? We see that we have two axes, right? A vertical one that goes from 0 to 100 and a horizontal one that goes from 0 to 90, okay? And we see that we have this huge curve that goes down so fast. What do you think are we going to talk about? Well, the title of the article where it was published is Losing 80% of mobile users is normal. It's an old article that has been published on LinkedIn a few years ago by Andrew Chen, but it still checks out. The data is still true and the trend is still true. It shows the average retention of Android apps over time. You see that on 100 users that you get, it goes down real fast, and after just a few days, you already lost more than the majority of users. But first, I'm Luc Nailis. I worked as a product owner for Odoo, and today we're going to talk about user onboarding. That is, how we make sure that this line there is not so steep, okay? Let's go back to the graph. You see that after 3 days, we lose that more than 3/4 of the user base, which is huge. Imagine how long you've been working on this app, and after only 3 days, people stop using it. And worse, the longer you go, after a month, it's 90%. And the more you go, and the less people are using your app. If you're seeing this and work in the industry, if you're a developer, a product designer, a product owner, whatever, you probably wonder, well, should I change and get another career? Should I train in dancing or singing and try to do something else? Is everything this grim? Are we all doomed? Well, of course, no. Because I cheated a bit with the graph and the title. It's not the entire content. The real title is Losing 80% of mobile users is normal, and why the best apps do better. Because you see that if we rank the app based on their notes they get on their marketplace, you see that the really good apps, they still have the same trend, right? The axes are sort of the same, and it still goes down. But the most important part, the very big difference, is what happens in the first few days, where you can see that, okay, they do lose people, of course, but way less, meaning that after a time, when it stabilizes, they keep way more users, okay? You can see that everyone loses users, and it's normal. Some people are just testing out, some people don't get it, some people are not really looking for something, but I mean, come on, look at the green graph there, the green line. They lose like 80% of the user base, while the best apps keep 80% of the user base, right? After around the 7 days, you can see the trend is really different. I mean, in terms of user base and in business, it's a huge impact. So how can we explain such a big gap? How can it be that two apps get completely different reactions? Well, it's all about what is called in product design, the onboarding. That is, when people discover your product, right, during those first few days, their first few steps, how is it going, right? How do you make sure that those first few steps are good and that you're really making sure that they get on board? And really the word should help you get what onboarding means, right? You want to get people on board, right? They're a bit lost, they're in the sea trying not to drown, and you make sure that they get on board, and from there everything is easier, all right? So we'll see a bit what this onboarding is about. Because it has 3 roles, right? In a product, it has 3 main roles that we'll talk about. First, the goal with onboarding is making sure that people are feeling good, right? They're not stressed, they're happy to be there, they're happy to discover what you prepared with your team, okay? And this is why you see a lot of things like, oh, it's nice to meet you. This doesn't have a lot of business value except making sure people are happy, feeling good about it. And it's the same for, oh, let me know if we can help. That's the same, right? We try to make sure they feel good about themselves while they're discovering the product. And sometimes people even go overboard, and it's fine and it's normal. And they say things like, oh, it's amazing, you clicked on the button, that's so great. And okay, it's a bit overplaying it, but people are happy and people see that and there's things like, oh, I'm so good, they're right, and they feel good. So first, welcoming people, very important. Second is explaining, and this is something normally people already do naturally when they build a product. This is, for example, in Odoo. If you start talking about Odoo, We have those bubbles that show you where you should click. We have those explanations that appear when you put your mouse on it that explain, okay, if you click here, this will do that. Or maybe a message that says, well, you're going to do this, and is it really what you want to do? The goal is to make sure people understand really how the software works. But don't go too far, because if you're trying to explain too much at once, you end up with tooltips that look like this, and nobody likes this, right? It's way too long, and people will just skip it, especially if you have a ton of those steps. This is not a lesson. This is not getting a master in using your product. It's about discovering the first few steps, okay? So don't do this, because you will use your user base really fast. They will just skip everything. They won't understand anything, and it won't work. And third is actually the most important part. So this stands for what's in it for me. And that's the user, that's what he has in mind, right? What's in it for me? Why should I use this product, right? And in itself, this could be a topic for a ton of talks. So we just skim over it. The idea is you want to make sure that your product acts on specific pain points, right? You're solving problems. You're making sure people don't have this problem anymore thanks to your product. We talk also about personas, so knowing who your target is, what's their background, how do they think, what's the knowledge they have about stuff, how you can make sure really that you tailor the value you're building for this specific user base so that they do find it when they test your software. And third is marketing, in the sense that once you get this value, once you know, okay, my software does this, it solves this problem for those people, make sure that when you communicate about your product, you stay in line with that, right? And you stress the right thing. It's not, it's super fast, it's blah, blah, blah. Make sure first it's like, it solves this problem. Because when they will test the software, they will already have that in mind. And actually, if you do that with a friend, like if you sit next to a friend while he's testing the software, you'll probably do it naturally, right? You won't do like this huge tutorial, or like, okay, I will talk straight for an hour to explain everything. It's more like, oh, click there. Oh, see, that's cool. It's been automated, and now you sent an email. And if you do that, oh, look. And it's really something we do naturally, except that we do it naturally because we're in person. But if it's a user somewhere in the world, well, you can't be there in person, right? So you need to design your onboarding and try really to do it in a way like if you could sit next to the person and explain step by step what's happening, well, the product should replace you, because the product is next to the person and can do it for you, okay? Because once it started, as a product designer, all we can do is like hope everything will go fine, right? While hoping that for the users, well, it won't be too hard and they won't get mad trying to confirm this damn invoice, okay? And what's even worse, those users, usually they won't give you a lot of time, right? Except if really the company decided to adopt your software, or their friends told them really you should use it. Most of the time people would just skim around, have a quick look, and if it doesn't really create a great impression, they would just leave forever, okay? So it means that we have a very short time span where we can catch them, hook them on the product, make sure that they get that they actually have to use it, otherwise it's lost forever. So how, right? How can we do this? How can we make sure that we use this opportunity well? Well, one of the tricks is to get people to the aha moment. The aha moment is this moment where you're testing a software, clicking around, not sure what you're doing, and sometimes it clicks and you go, aha, okay. And it just clicked and you get, okay, so this works like this, let me do this, and oh, that's so great, I want it in my life, okay? So you want to make sure that your products gets people to that aha moment, because that's how you can maximize, with this short time span, the chances of actually users adopting your app, your software, your website, or whatever, okay? So we'll go through 3 tricks, okay? 3 techniques, 3 axes from which you can review your onboarding and make sure that you're doing everything possible to get people to this aha moment, okay? They all start with an S, so it's easy to remember. It's start, simple, and straightforward, and we'll go through them. We'll go through them through a metaphor as well. So this diamond here is the added value. It's how great your software is, okay? And next to it, you have a user that's wondering, okay, is it really something that brings value to me? Except, well, it's not that visible. The value is a bit hidden because, well, it's a software, so there's a lot of screens, of buttons, of interactions that people need to do before they get to that value, right, to that diamond. We'll use this to a bit analyze the other axes, okay? Because the first one is, of course, to make sure people know where to start, right? Starting is already a decision. It's already something people need to do, so make sure it's easy for them. Because when people see this, for you, well, okay, you know where they will start. But for them, well, not that easy. Should they start from here? Looks great, right? From the top, maybe it's quicker. From the bottom, but then maybe they need to take another approach. Or maybe is it from the side? Well, if you offer a product where people don't know where to start because people land on the website and there's 100 buttons, 100 things to do, forms everywhere, you're going to lose them, right? So you want to make sure that the start is easy to find. And we can do it, for example, by already starting with a few steps, right? So we already remove part of the things that people need to go through, and we tell them, okay, start here. It's already done, okay? Just follow the way. If we take, for example, what we did in Odoo recently, so online appointment is a terrific app. There's been a talk on it already. You should really test it because it's really helpful for people that needs to book meetings online. But people were missing it. They were playing around with a calendar, but never seeing that actually you could share your calendar online and let your customers, your suppliers, your colleagues, whatever, book meeting, okay? Instead of having to send 100 email, are you available next Thursday? You just share this calendar and people book a meeting. So what we did, we showed people where they needed to start with this ribbon that you see here. So this is an onboarding panel, and with just a few steps, you're already ready to start using it, right? You configure where you're available, right? So not that day, not at that time, etc. You share the link, right? So you put this in your signature, for example. If you want to book a meeting with me, click here. And you connect your Odoo calendar with your Gmail or Outlook calendar so that you don't have double bookings, okay? And with just that, people get to the aha moment because, all right, it means my calendar is synchronized, I can share it with people, and they can book meeting with me. Aha, I want this software, I want to use this app, okay? Same with survey, right? When people test survey, it's not like, oh, I want to create 100 questions because that's so fun. This is a part that's not really interesting. So we remove all the steps that we can so that it's as short as possible, and we offer you the ability to load the survey that we already prepare, and that's already interesting. So that you click there, you get a survey, you test it, and you see already, okay, so people will get this interface, I will get this reporting. Aha, this is really great. I want this in my life, all right? Make sure also that everything is simple, because as product designers, we see our product like this, right? It's really simple. You need to go through it for a while, and then you get the value. But in truth, for users, it looks like this, right? It's really, there's a ton of options. There's a lot of words they don't get. There's buttons everywhere. There's error messages, etc., etc. Don't do this, right? Make sure the first few steps are very simple. Just hide away all the complexity. For example, when you start with CRM, we offer you a blank screen with all the columns, right? So you can see, okay, those are the stages. Okay, I get where it goes, and then you create an opportunity. You click on the create button, and you have a very simple card where you can just put some very basic information like, okay, my contact is this, and that's his email, etc., etc. So it stays very simple. And if later you want to go further with the CRM, we do have settings where you can activate a lot of other options, right? If you want to have automatic lead assignation based on rules that you define with the fields and probability that are computed, etc., it exists, it's there. But first, we start with the simple stuff so that people get, aha, I need this CRM. It's way better than my Excel spreadsheet, okay? And later, they will face some more complexity. They will look around in the settings and add the tools they need. The third point is about being straightforward. That is, we see our product like this, But usually our product is very complex, it's very flexible, it handles a lot of use cases, but it means that when people arrive, it actually looks like this, right? Because there's a value that they're looking for, but where is it? You know, there's so many apps, so many buttons, so many menu items. Where should I go, right? And what's the next step, right? So what we want to do is to make sure that there's an easy path, a straightforward path from where they start to the value, okay? Let's take a classic example. In website, a few years ago, in past versions, when people were installing the website, they were seeing this screen. And on this screen, you see, we were showing all the cool themes that we had that they could add so that the website could look good straight away. But during user tests, we were not seeing this. We were seeing users that were wondering, well, this one looks great. Oh, but this one's too. Should I check this one? Let me see. Oh, this picture is cool. And if I take this one, can I change back to this one later? And it was already a lot of friction, a lot of stress, right? We don't want that. We want it to be straightforward. So what did we do in Odoo? Well, we added this quick form, which is the website configurator, where you say, well, I want a website to do this, and my business is this, and this is what I have in mind. And it's very straightforward. You answer to those questions, and boom, you get a website. It already looks great. And we tell you straight away, you can change whatever you want here, okay? You just customize everything, but you already have a website that looks good. So you're already at the step of, this is a great website editor. I want this as my website for my company, okay? So we make it simple, we remove steps, etc., but we also make sure that it's not like pick one of the 100 options, because you're going to lose users there. They will not be able to choose, and they will say, I will look later when I have more time. So to recap, if you want to make sure people get to this aha moment when they test your software, if you want to be the ones that don't have a curve that goes like this, but maybe keep a bit more people at the start so that later on the trend keeps, of course, going down, but less fast, go back to your onboarding and review it, review those first few steps, look how users react to those, and make sure that they know where to start, okay? You clearly show this is step one, go there, and it will be easy from there. Make sure it's simple. So if you have complex options, if you have advanced tools, if you have things that, okay, the business is complex, so we need to be able to provide this and that, hide it for now, okay? Make sure that the first few steps make them realize, okay, this is easy, and I can introduce them to my colleagues, they will like it. And third, make sure it's straightforward. Of course, you have a ton of options, a ton of use cases, a ton of things people can do. But let's start with a simple path where they can go from A to B, from B to C, etc., and get the value they are here for, okay? So go back to your onboarding, check how users react, and I'm sure that your curve will start looking a bit more like this, and you will have way more success with your app. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy, and I hope it will help you working on your product. Have a nice day. I have a pad here, so UX-talk. We can see a bit if you are facing such issues. Maybe if we can share some tips together.
Thank you very much, Luc, for this great presentation. Perhaps we can start with one of the first questions, which is, what metrics does Odoo keep track of to continually improve the onboarding of Odoo products?
So there's a lot of different approaches to this. We have a lot of we use external tools like Full Story or User on Board, where we can really have like large KPIs of how long people stay, how many clicks they did, etc. But what we like to do is to really go deep down in how they felt at each click. So we really prefer to have a look at like 20 videos where they really say out loud whatever they have in mind, that just look at KPIs like in a analytics dashboard, because we think it really helps more get in the head of the users to design it for them.
Great, thank you so much for your answer. So we have another one, and it's, are marketing teams involved in the product design process at Odoo?
They are, because we share a lot of feedback together. And for example, when people comment on the documentation and they say, we get a lot of visits on this article, or people are asking documentation for this flow. We know as product owners that well, maybe the flow is not easy, and we need to have a look at how we could make it easier, because ideally documentation shouldn't be needed except for very tricky stuff.
Okay. All right. Thank you for this answer as well. And the last question that we have for now is, what are the differences between marketing designers and product designers?
I mean, we do sort of marketing, except that we work on the product. And when we need some new designs or really cool pictures, we ask marketing so that they can have a look at something that fits with the general brand and that looks good, etc. It's basically different departments, but we work together. But for example, I'll focus on my apps, and then I ask help if needed. And on the other hand, if the marketing team needs help for some documentation or something, I'll jump in. So it's really different teams.
Okay, so we just have another question that just popped in. So, Luc, what would be the next challenge in terms of UX for Odoo?
It would be great if there could be only one. I think we still have a lot of things we're working on. So we've seen, for example, we've just released the knowledge app. So because that's really something we worked on. We know that we'll get a lot of feedback. We'll have to study how users use it to be able to, because we're sure that there are some things we didn't think about that we need to correct. So I'm really curious and excited to see how it will go for users during the first few steps and see if there's some things to tweak. But in general, in Odoo, we have the chance of working with a framework and an interface that makes things easy by default. Because the fields, the design, the buttons, everything's already done for us. So it's really most specific to a few apps that we have some time to do something, but we'll see.
All right, so we just have another question. So how do you select the people for the UX interviews? Are they internal Odoo employees or outside people?
Both, actually. So we do sometimes ask our new employees, before they start learning the product, we do ask them to try Odoo. But we know that there's a bias, because if they're developers or people working for Odoo, they already have a specific profile, which is not always the one our user will have. Maybe our users are older or less tech savvy, etc. So we need to make sure that we don't go too far in that direction. So we do use other service that recruits persons that just never heard about Odoo, are about 45 and live in the US, for example, so that we can see, well, for that person, how does it go? So we do both.
Great. All right. And we have another question. Do you have different ways to show the design depending on the country, Luc?
We try to keep things very simple and centralized, but we have, for example, a lot of features. For example, when you write from right to left, we need to make sure that our design works. And so we need to keep up with that, because otherwise, indeed, some users won't be able to use Odoo. But in general, as I said, we have this global framework of the form view, the list view, etc. So when we do design of new apps or new features, we can just follow those steps, and we know it will be a recipe for success.
Okay, great. Well, right now we don't have any more questions. So I guess, do you have a last word for the community?
Oh, I think I will just say, if you're a developer or a product designer, you're probably very passionate. So keep it up, because I know how fun it is. And to work with developers, I know how much they love the product. So keep it up, because we do love seeing what you guys come up with. Sometimes we forget about something, and the community comes back with an answer. So it's really great. And yeah, keep it up.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.